Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, red.olaughlin here with the Talking Heads program on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I am a researcher. I love to research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. You treat a cause, you fix a problem. You treat symptoms, and you'll always treat symptoms. I'm not a doctor, never been part of the medical industry, pharmaceutical industry, but my first love was chemistry. Long before I met my wife, we just celebrated 54 years of marriage. And chemistry is one of those things that was in my life at the beginning. I got an invitation to Vietnam, never had a chance to practice it. Late in life, my wife came down with breast cancer, and it kind of got me focused back into researching the things that we don't really understand because we're never taught. So anyway, nowadays I research things, I write about them, I speak about them, primarily in the area of health and wellness. My real niche, my real joy is longevity, aging. However, on the series of Talking Heads, we've talked about a number of different things, from Alzheimer's to stress to just a number of things. But today and next week, we're going to talk about pain. Pain, one of those topics that it's all of us face at one point in time. Let's see if I can pull this up here. And I should have slide number 1 up. Pain. Basically, it's an unpleasant sensation that we get. Sometimes very sharp, or sometimes very dull. And usually it's accompanied with some kind of emotional feeling. It's an experience. You touch a hot stove, that's a little bit different than jamming your finger in a doorway, or maybe you just happen to have a lower back problem. But pain is one of those things that allows our body to continue to improve. Without it, we're going to have a problem. But our whole system, our whole body physiologically is set up that pain is what we need in order to improve. So that pain, we hear some things like call no pain, no gain. Well, that's true in many, many regards. That pain actually allows our bodies to improve whatever is broken. U.S. Marine Corps has a slogan, something along the lines of pain is weakness leaving the body. I think that was accredited to General Chesty Puller. He's kind of an unusual character. The Medal of Honor is the highest medal in the military. And the Marine Corps, the second highest, is called the Navy Cross. He has 5 of them. I've read each one of his 5 Navy Crosses, and to me, it looks like that he really probably should have had about 3 Medals of Honor, because the things that he did to earn those are very definitely in that same category. But somebody truly experienced with pain. Now, pain can be a number of different things, and this is, if you look up tell me the types of pain, you're going to get something at this list. Acute, something that happened short period of time. Chronic, it can be that same acute pain, but it lasts a lot longer. Neuropathic, it's something dealing with the nerves. Nociceptive, nocioplastic are kind of the same thing, except nocioplastic kind of deals more with a whole body pain, something where you can't really pinpoint something. With the nociceptic, septic deals more with tissue damage more than anything else. Radicular is something where the pain kind of just radiates, say, from the lower back or from the neck and shoulders. Anyway, those are nice terms, but let's just get down to what do we really know about pain and what should we know about pain. If I look at pain, let's just look at 3 different things. Number 1, injury, referral, and systemic. Injury, those are things, and I'll come back to this here in just a second and go into detail about those 3. But when you go to the doctor and you have pain, let's say you have lower back pain, and you go in there and you've had it for 2 or 3 months or whatever, shoulder pain, neck pain, headaches, it doesn't matter what the pain is, knee, you have pain. Chances are the doctor's going to treat the symptom. That's That's what our medical institution is. It does not look at what is the cause of the pain. It looks at what can I do to alleviate pain. The doctor wants to give you something, a pill, a bandage, whatever it may happen to be, even if it requires surgery. He wants to do something in order to get rid of your pain. But what is the real cause of that pain? What if your lower back pain was caused by a kidney infection? Or what if it was caused by prostate or fibroids or something else? There are a lot of things that can cause lower back pains that is just not a muscular issue. And unless you start asking questions, we have no way of knowing what is the cause of that thing. If they start going into, well, tell me what your typical diet is, tell me about your exercise, what kind of stress are you under? If you start looking at the bigger issue of who we are, what do we do, and get into our real life, and doctors don't take the time to do that, it's very, very difficult to figure out what the root cause of a problem is. And as we get into today's talk, it'll become more obvious that pain can happen in a number of places, and the cause of that pain may not necessarily be in the same places that you're actually feeling the pain. Another issue to consider is seasonal versus long term. Let's assume for a second that every April you get asthma or asthma-like symptoms, runny nose, cough, runny eyes. But then in 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, it's over. Well, you can tell it's maybe ragweed or maybe something else. That's a seasonal issue. But if you happen to have something that's lasting a long time, let's say you have lower back pain that's been there for years, you have a runny nose that just no matter what you do, you can't get rid of it. It's probably not a single cause. It's something that's more than that. Might be a fungus, might be some other kind of infection, might be a number of things. But when you start having long-term pain in the same place, you really need to get to a doctor to find out what it is, because it's not something that's just there and gone. I used to get really bad, basically seasonal rhinitis, the runny nose, cough, runny eyes, a little bit of headache. And I let it go to a point where I need something from the doctor. The over-the-counter medicine wasn't doing it. I go to see the doctor. I was living in New Orleans at the time. I went in there. Same thing happened the next year. Same thing happened. The third year, I'm sitting there in his office, and my files are sitting there in front of me. So I pick them up, and I'm in there on the exact same day I was in there the previous year. So I go back to the previous year from that, and I'm there one day different than it was from 2 years ago. And so he comes in. I said, "Doctor, is this something that's seasonal? Because I'm here literally the same time 3 years in a row." And each time I had gone about as far as I could into the cycle, a couple, 3 weeks of, I just can't control it with over-the-counter meds. And he looks at it and says, "Yeah, probably seasonal rhinitis." Well, interestingly enough, I was flying someplace not very long after that, and one of the in-flight newspaper magazines was talking about freeze-dried bee pollen, local bee pollen that's frozen, freeze-dried, and that if you start taking that in very small amounts, 1/8 of a teaspoon, then your body can build up an immunity to that particular thing. So I found a local shop. I found some freeze-dried local bee pollen. I started taking it 1/8 of a teaspoon a day religiously for weeks, for months. And the 1 or 2 times I said, well, let me just try a couple times. And all of a sudden I took 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden I start getting some of the same symptoms back. But literally the next year I'm waiting for these symptoms to show up, and they never did. That whatever caused the bees were out there, they're in the same flowers, whatever it was, I was able to develop an immunity to what I had previously had a seasonal reaction to. But those are things that if you don't know what to do, we suffer. Pain, let's talk about injury. I can remember not long ago, I wasn't paying attention. I'm in the car talking to somebody, and I'm closing the door, and I still have my hand on top of the door. The window was down, and I slammed the door, and I didn't get my hand out of the way in time. And I had literally right on the knuckle joint of one of my fingers, I had caught it in the door. Well, at that point in time, I was working as a representative for a multi-level marketing company that was selling a product that had a particular xanthone, a particular molecule called gamma-mangostin. It had about 43 of these xanthones in it. Well, I happen to know from what I was doing at the time that when you have an injury, you have two enzymes in the body. One is active all the time. It's called cyclooxygenase 1. It's primarily in our stomachs, but it's in other places too. And it's a very protective enzyme. There's another one that's dormant. It sits around there and just waits to be activated by our immune response. It's called cyclooxygenase 2, COX-2. Well, COX-2 is activated as a result of some kind of trauma. I slammed the car door into my knuckle, and all of a sudden I initiated the immune response in the body. COX-2, when it's activated, causes a particular reaction where arachidonic acid, AA, causes prostaglandin G2 to activate, which causes prostaglandin H2 to activate. And then you have some 5 different tissue-specific synthases, PGE2 on up to TXA2. Again, not something we really need to get into detail about, but this is the normal immune response in the body. So if you can find something that will stop COX-2 from activating, you can stop literally the pain feeling. You can stop the swelling, and swelling is required. If your body, that's the normal response. The body swells in the area where the trauma or the injury is at to prevent foreign things from getting in there. So it's a protective mechanism. You get the heat, you get the redness, you get the soreness. So I went back inside. I took some of this juice. It comes from a plant called a mangosteen. It's not a mango per se, but it's something from Southeast Asia. And they take and they grind they freeze dry the entire fruit and then pulverize it, and you get literally a powder. And they put this powder, mix it up with several other fruit juices, and I'm able to get the entire mangosteen plant, of which one of the xanthones is called gamma mangostin. And that gamma mangostin shuts down the COX-2 and it just inhibits it 100%. And literally, 5 minutes after I had that reaction in the car, I was in the house. I had a nice big glass of the juice, and I never had any swelling, never had any pain. Never. If I had squeezed the knuckle, yeah, I could feel it, but I had full mobility. There was no redness, no soreness, but I blocked the COX-2 enzyme from happening. And as a result, I allowed the body to heal itself without having that extra amount of time required for the swelling to go down and all the rest of the things that's in there. So as you're looking at an injury kind of pain, that's something that you know exactly where it's at. You stub your toe, you bump your head. Those kinds of pains happen all the time. And those pains are generally easy to fix, but most of us take an aspirin, an ibuprofen, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. But the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, NSAIDs, they will also interact and cause COX-1 to not do its job. You end up with a lot of stomach problems, especially with ibuprofen. And as such, there's a problem because COX-2, when you're taking something to treat it, affects the COX-1 enzyme. They came out with Vioxx and several other things that says it was limited the COX-2 inhibit. And it did, but not well enough. Yeah, you got maybe a 300% decrease, but you still had an effect on COX-1. But you had a lot of heart problems, a lot of people, a lot of issues. I think a couple of them taken off the marketplace. So when I look nowadays and I try to find out what molecule out there will shut down, inhibit the COX-2 enzyme during a pain event, and there aren't many. The only other one I found that works reasonably well is turmeric or curcumin. It's a yellow curry that you see from Indian recipes. That curry has a turmeric in it, and that turmeric actually acts at the molecular level as a very good anti-inflammatory. The only problem is it's not very bioavailable in the body. As such, you take it, but you're not getting much of it. But if you look on the label and you buy your turmeric or your curcumin with what's called black pepper extract, piperine, Piperine, it makes the bioavailability of that particular molecule, the curcumin, about 2,000% more bioavailable. So it goes into the body, it gets down to the cellular level quickly. There's still very little interface with the COX-1. It doesn't impact it as much as others, but not the same degree that gamma mangostin did from the mangosteen plant. So if you can't find the whole fruit mangosteen juice at your local store, turmeric is a pretty good substitute, but make sure it has a black pepper extract. Black pepper extract also works well in another a compound called resveratrol. Again, not very bioavailable, but when you need that particular supplement, if it has the black pepper extract, you're in good shape. Now, if you're cooking with uh, curcumin, turmeric, and I, peel it with a spoon edge, and you grind it up, however you want to cook it in your meals. Make sure you add a lot of black pepper to get the benefit from that curcumin. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide here. Pain. We also have referral pain. Now, referral pain is a little different. We have something that's causing the pain, but that's not where the pain is actually located at. This is typically associated with an organ. Something is wrong with an organ in the body. There's no injury per se, it's inflammation, oxidative stress, maybe could be a pinched nerve next to it, or a duct bile. Anyway, something is backing up in there, and we'll talk a little bit about that down the road. But we have many different locations in the body, and some doctors who deal with pain say about 50% of the pain is not an injury pain. It's a pain from some other part of the body that's referring it. The one that we know the most about is heart, that we hear about. Yeah, if you got pain in your left arm, your shoulder, your jaw, it's probably a heart related issue. Now, if you have angina, you can actually feel that elephant sitting on your chest, different animal. But if you have a pancreatic pain, then you probably may have a left shoulder pain, might have back pain, upper left side back. If it's a gallbladder, chances are it's shoulder, but also more the neck than the back. Liver shows up more in the right side and the back. Again, it depends where these organs are at in the body as to what part of the anatomy things show up in. Spleen typically shows up in the left shoulder, but the spleen also goes across the entire body, so it could show up other places. We just talked about the heart. Prostate, one of those things in the lower body. If you happen to have ovary deal, it could be, again, lower back, depending on the side related issue. Just the same thing with kidneys. You're going to have a lower back pain. So those things are issues that we don't think we have a problem. It's just lower back. Did I strain myself? Picking something up? Well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But if it's going to be there longer than a couple of weeks, chances are it might be something else. We have another kind of pain. It's called systemic. And that was that nocioplastic that we talked about earlier. It's kind of there. And, the nocioseptic and nocioplastic can be acute, can be chronic. There's just a lot of different things. It may even have the neuropathies in there too. But fibromyalgia is generally something they label as a term. They can't figure out what it is, so they call it fibromyalgia. I've heard a couple of doctors refer to it that way. It's just a generic term. But this pain is widespread. It affects us in many ways. We hurt all over. Fatigue. We have problems sleeping. We can't get comfortable. Sometimes it's caused genetically. Might be a fungal infection. It might be something else. But a lot of times that systemic pressure is really an emotional issue. We had some kind of trauma that really stressed us out so much that it kind of overwhelmed our immune system. And now we have a lot of things there. And it may be combined with other things. So it's not just necessarily I have a shoulder issue or a lower back issue. Maybe it's combined with fibromyalgia. So it's more than just a little problem. Many times cortisol, we have our stress hormones, the adrenal glands are pumping stuff, adrenaline and cortisol. And sometimes cortisol is not really getting out there the way it should because there's maybe an adrenal issue. Our adrenal glands not operating properly. And if we have a cortisol deficiency, we might actually have a problem with a whole body kind of pain. And again, this is something that you really need, truly, you have a doctor talk to you and find out, because it's more than just something we can take on ourselves. Again, a disclaimer, if you're in any kind of pain, you're on any kind of medicines, no matter what the medicine is, don't just start doing something because you saw it on YouTube, you read about it with Dr. Google on the computer. Go in and see somebody who's an expert, because you don't know what you're doing that's going to have some counter effect on the prescription med that you're taking. If you can't get in to see your doctor real well, go to your local pharmacy. They generally have a much better working knowledge of the contraindications of one drug versus another. And that's a big, big topic. Let's talk about something that we all experience over time. This is something that just our bodies are meant, when everything is operating fine, we have no pain. But sometimes we have these abdominal pains, and we can feel them in our gut. Um, Sometimes we're eating too frequently. A lot of nutritional experts will say, eat 4 or 5 or 6 small meals a day. I think that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. You're never allowing your blood sugar levels to get down. You're not allowing your liver to process things. You're not allowing your digestive systems to operate properly. Eating 1, 2 meals a day is fine. If you happen to be in a habit of eating 3 meals a day, that's fine. That's not too many. But eating more than 3 meals a day, even if it's just a snack in the afternoon, you're causing a lot of problems that people think, well, if I do that, I can stretch things out. I can take my calories and stretch. No, just let the digestive system do what it's supposed to do. But when you're doing that, depending on the food you're eating, and again, our dietary choices are a lot of our problems. Grains, you have glutens, you have dairy, you have a lot of things, seed oils, your canola, your sunflower, your safflower. Uh, in and of itself, we need omega-6 essential fatty acids. That's called an essential fatty acid because our bodies can't make it. But the essential fatty acids from omega-3s and omega-6s, if we end up with a 1-to-1 ratio, that's probably the most ideal in the world. If your omega-6s to omega-3s exceed 4-to-1, now all of a sudden those omega-6s that are essential for the body to work become inflammatory. In the standard American diet, you may actually find out that your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio might be 10, 20, 30, 50 or more. And now all of a sudden you have a highly inflamed body because of the oils that you're choosing. Now, maybe you're not cooking that way, but when you're getting French fries from a local place or somebody's doing their fried foods, a lot of those oils are the essential omega-6s from vegetable oil. Sometimes antibiotics get in there and they kill all the good healthy flora in the body, and now you have a overgrowth of the not so healthy stuff, and you're going to end up with some problems. Some medications are also a deal. Food allergies, again, a food allergy is going to cause a reaction, just the same thing as an intolerance. We talk about gluten sensitivity. Sometimes our bodies are a little less sensitive. If you're 10% sensitive to gluten, you may not going to have the same outward appearances as somebody who has a major problem with gluten, but it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you mentally, emotionally, your whole body. You're just not operating that way. And the molecule gluten is almost a mirror image of the molecule in dairy, where you're looking at the two. They look so much alike. So if you have a gluten sensitivity, you probably have a dairy sensitivity, and as such, you almost need to probably give them both up. If you happen to have a fibroid, ovary problems, you want to avoid dairy because that is something that just really activates that part of the body, our reproductive organs, and really wreaks havoc. It's something you can avoid. So dairy and gluten are some issues that are intolerance, sensitivities. We also have foods that are enzymes inhibitors. We have foods that are anti-nutrients. We have foods that contain synthetic fibers. All of these things are not what our bodies need, and as such, we have a problem with them. And when our bodies start to process it, now we have issues. If we were to take a look at our bodies and divide them into quadrants, let's say I were to take a black marking pencil, and I was to draw a tic-tac-toe diagram on my stomach. And I would get the 2 lines going down and the 2 lines going across. Well, if I have quadrants in my body, my top left, I have my gallbladder. My middle quadrant and upper, I have my liver, my stomach, and my pancreas. My top right quadrant, I have my spleen. I go across the middle part, and I have what we called IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. In the middle, you also have kidney. In the middle, we have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And again, in intestinal bacterial IBS, my brain is blank. I'll come back to it in a second. And then on the middle right-hand side, middle left-hand side, we have our kidney, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Lower right, we have our appendix. The middle, we have ovary, fibroid, prostate, and on the far left-hand side, we have ovary. Those are the ones that are there. Now, obviously, appendix, you have a problem with your appendix, you're going to know about it. I'm the oldest of 9 kids. My mom had appendicitis very late in life, and she swore absolutely no doubt in her mind that her appendix pain was far worse than any birth that she gave. In fact, she said probably worse than all of them put together. So appendix can certainly get your attention. But each one of these things I talked about earlier, your gallbladder is going to show up in your right shoulder. Your pancreas is going to show up in your left shoulder, your neck. These things, you have a problem with something in our body, but the pain is not with the spleen. The pain is not with the kidney. The pain is going to be in our lower back, and it's going to be something just as if we were trying to lift something out of the trunk of our car and we pull the muscle, and I get that same kind of pain. And so if I'm looking at pain, and again, it's not gone in 2 weeks, you probably really need to see an expert, and you need to look at what are you eating, what kinds of things are there. Maybe you need to have a blood test to take a look at your liver, your pancreas, and spleen enzymes and things. Those are things that are fairly easy to do if you know that's where you need to look. Pain. What are we looking at? What's kind of causing it? Well, the pain generally comes from some kind of inflammation. If I have an inflammation of the kidneys, the adrenal glands, I'm going to get some kind of reaction because that's not a normal thing to have. So whether I have an inflamed heart, I'm definitely going to get some reaction now. That inflamed liver, any of our organs that have that inflamed as an organ, and the ducts and the nerves around them, they're all going to give you some kind of pain. Our gut, we may have a floral imbalance. You take an antibiotic, it's killing everything there. You take an oral antibiotic, you ought to be talking to your doctor about taking a probiotic. Now that probiotic, you also probably ought to consider some kind of prebiotic with it. Some kind, it's almost like a fertilizer for the biotics. But you may also have a food reaction. We talked about intolerances and sensitivities to things. Lungs, we have an asthma, we have an upper respiratory deal. Again, 10 days, 2 weeks, you have a problem, you really need to go talk to somebody. I just got through my second bout of COVID. I had runny nose. I still have a little bit of a COVID cough. My one really bad symptom from COVID was strep throat. Not a typical one. My wife didn't have it when she had hers. We both had the cough. We both had the runny nose. But again, ours were done in about 3 days. COVID cough is one of those things that just kind of lingers on for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. But if anything's beyond a couple of weeks, chances are there's something there. So it might be an allergy to something, but if it's longer than that, it might be some other kind of infection. You have some kind of itis, tendonitis, arthritis, generally, not always, but generally associated with some kind of chromium imbalance. Chromium imbalance is one of those things that back in the 20s and 30s, way back when 100 years ago, gestational diabetes was not an issue because doctors knew back then that the fetus was taking chromium from the mother, and as such, they would develop gestational diabetes. They would give the mothers chromium and everything disappeared. Well, after World War II, all of that knowledge disappeared. And a lot of times now, new mothers have gestational diabetes, but they're not told about the chromium imbalance. A lot of issues out there. Headaches, there must be 150,000 reasons why we get headache. Well, maybe not that many. But headaches and high blood pressure, two things that absolutely have a lot of causes, and you start treating one as a symptom, and then all of a sudden something else happens. You're still treating that first symptom, but you're getting the same result. But a headache could be caused by a gallbladder, a muscle tension from the back of the neck. My daughter gets a lot of those. Sinus issues, a lot of issues there with regard to headaches. And let's go ahead and wrap these things there up. Pain, our bodies are meant to have a certain process happen. And as such, when we eat, we expect certain things to happen in our digestive process. If our stomach acid is outside that range of pH of 1 to 3, we're not digesting our food properly. If we're not really eating and chewing, we're not getting the molecular size of our food down where everything can happen. As the food gets into our stomach acid begins at first level. Actually, our first level of digestion starts in the mouth with the saliva. Gets into our stomach, the next level of digestion takes place. As the food is moving through into the small intestine, our liver is going to produce a bile. Well, if that bile is being slowed down because of other issues, and a lot of things cause that, that bile, instead of being a nice liquid and flows, it becomes more of a sludge. Now we have a slowness in our digestive process. Things start to happen where I normally expect the digestive enzymes to get in and attack the molecules of what we just ate. Now gas forms. We start getting a lot of bloating and other things. So that liver bile is needed. You need the pancreatic enzymes. You need the lipases from the pancreas, and that gets through the ducts. If we have any kind of nerve damage that's not allowing these things to operate properly, when the things get down into the intestines, now we start to have an intestinal issue. And we have things that happen in our small intestines and large intestines. We talked about the small intestinal bacterial overload, SIBO. And there's a lot of things that can be done about that. Now, I intentionally didn't talk about any of the options that we have to treat these today, because that's next week. We will talk about what can I do about SIBO? What can I do about these other things? But today, I just wanted to give an overview on see if that works. We're talking about an overview of pain. And now we know the different kinds of pain. So next week when I come back, I'll talk about what can we actually do about it. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave things. So I'm going to thank Dr. Jacqueline today for allowing me on her Talking Head show with USA Global TV and Radio. I can be reached at red.olaughlin.com. My contact information's there. And that, for those people listening on podcast, that's red like the color, RED, O'Laughlin, spelled OLAUGHLIN. So it's red.olaughlin.com. And that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. It has my contact information. So thank you again, Dr. Jacqueline. And I'm concluding today's program of Talking Heads, and I look forward to seeing you next week.